Alright guys, here we are again, another video on the Miata. Today I am taking my old stock coils off and fitting coil on plug. So what I've done so far is I've removed the old coil pack off the back of the motor there. I can show you over here on this head that I prepared earlier how to do that. So there's just the top two bolts, 12 mils. And then this one here, which I currently have out, also another 12 mil. And when you take those three bolts out of there, the coil pack just comes off the back of the head nice and easy. You don't want to drop this. That comes off. And now what I've done, so I've got my loom here that I've made up. I'll go over that later. See these wires go through and then they come out the back of these coils. What I just did is I cut the plug off and a bit of wire and I soldered them into my loom, and now I'm going to wrap that in tape and then slide this sheathing over it to protect it from chafing or heat and whatnot. For my coils, so you can get kits to do this, but I like doing stuff myself. So for my coils, they're off I think an early 2000s Holden Crewman. I'll grab one and show you. Yeah, so early 2000s Holden Crewman. There's the part number, and you can see it there. That's the part number there. The Bosch coils. The reason that I went for these is because there was a motor that was going to be scrap metaled, and I grabbed them off it before it got scrap metaled. And as you can see, they fit down in there pretty much perfectly. They all have to be on this angle like that when they're pushed down, so that the plug can touch or can plug in. And there's a very tight gap there, and so you have to plug the plug in and then push them down. And yeah, and I'm gonna trim the corner of the plug off just slightly to make them fit a little bit better. Now we'll go bring this with me and we will go over the wiring. That's a Miata cam gear. Right, so for the wiring on these specific coils are pretty much all different. So for the way that these coils are wired, we have a signal on the right when they're upright, and then you have the 12 volt ignition supply, and then you have two earths. And I've just gone into the loom, the two earths soldered together, and they go onto this white wire. And then I have the signal for coil 1 running down in the loom to coil 4, and coil 4 signal is joined into the coil 1 signal wire, and that comes out as the green wire there. And so the green wire is signal for 1 and 4, and that goes to the black with a white trace wire in the stock plug. And this is the stock plug for a 1990 mx5. And then we have 2 and 3, same story. The one on the right is the signal wire, and then you have 12 volt ignition supply, and then the two on the left there, they're both earths twisted together, go to the same white wire, and I have my ignition supply going to the same red wire for all 4 coils. So they're all earthed and they all get the ignition power from the same place, and that is the red wire, which goes to the red wire in your stock plug. The signal for 2 and 3, because piston 2 and 3 get to TDC at the same time, so the signal for those two comes out the yellow wire, and that goes into the cream or white wire in the stock plug. The reason that I have this extra wire here is because the factory coils, I'll show you, are actually earthed through those screws just there. So those two screws you can see down there, they earth the coils, but because we're going coil on plug, this here is not an earth. They need another earth, so that's why you have to run this wire. So on this wire you just crimp on an eyelet and just put it onto any of the multiple bolts on the back of the head here. It doesn't matter which one, just any of them. Right, now as you can see, I've put some extra tape over that sheathing, and I just ground the edge of that nicely like that, and now they sit down and they almost don't touch. In fact, they don't touch. So there, all four of them are plugged in and down, and here I've got that all in the sheath apart from this one. This one here is just my earth, and I'm not sure where I'll run that one to. Probably that bolt just there, because that's where the old coil was mounted. Right, I'll just do that now. Okay, so I've just got that wire looped down there. I've got the main coil loom just tucked in that gap between the cam angle sensor and the edge of the head, routed underneath and then up, and it's sort of wedged in there. Now make sure all of these are pushed down properly. You have to come over to your igniter and you have to cut off OC1 and IB1 and solder those two together. I obviously haven't soldered them yet. And IB2 and OC2 and solder them together. A brief intermission from summer. I ended up taking that igniter module completely off, and I taped the two wires, or soldered the wires together, and then just taped everything into this loom with the ends of it all taped over so nothing can touch, and then tucked that under there like that. Now, reason it's taken so long for this video to come out is because that night I drove the car home, everything was perfectly fine, but I didn't do anything in the tune, and I melted two of my coils. So today I will show you exactly what needs to be changed in the tune, and I had to wait for quite a while to hear back from Bosch, to figure out what the settings needed to be, and now I have it figured out. So let's go through this in the tune right now. Okay, so you want to turn your ignition on, come over here into Tuner Studio, go to ignition settings, ignition options, wheel decoder. You want to make sure it's on falling edge, going high, and wasted coil on plug. And then over this side, you want to make the cranking dwell 3, cranking advance 5 degrees, Toyota multiplex off, standard dwell, your nominal dwell, which is running, you're going to make that 2.2, and your spark duration 0.7 milliseconds. With the factory coils, these cars run like 5.5 dwell, and that is what causes your causes coils to melt when you put them on, if you leave that standard. So you want to change those to 2.2, 0.7, and your cranking dwell 3, and then hit burn down the bottom here, and then close, and you just do a power cycle, turn your ignition off, that turns off, and then back on, just to make sure, and then start it up. Yeah, very important, you have to check your base timing, and you have to set it to whatever the tune says that it is. So if the tune says it's 15 degrees at idle when it's warm, it has to be set to 15 degrees at idle when it's warm. So I'm going to wait for this to warm up, and then I'm going to reset my base timing, and then we'll be good as gold. Alright, so you can take this thing here completely off, I've now found out. You just cut all the remaining wires off and insulate the ends of them so they'll never touch anything. This comes off, it's just a bolt there, that little 10mm, and that 10mm. Throw that away. Or don't throw it away, give it to someone. That little thingy was over this side. Now put it on there because that bolt also holds this fuse box on. And this wires used to go to the plug. I just heat shrunk them and then cable tied them to that wiring loom there. That can be tucked into there. Boom. Now you've tidied up your engine bay a little bit. And you're running coil on plug. And it's running mint. Alright, obviously, setting your base timing is going to be a bit of an issue because you can't put a timing light on your HT lead because you don't have HT leads. So what you want to do is you want to get one that you're happy to cut up, one of your old ones or a different one, which I've got. Cut the other end of it off, and then you want to strip it so that the carbon core is exposed. And then you just poke that down in there onto the spark plug until it clicks on. And then this end, you poke it up in there with that bent over. All the way up in, and then put some tape on it so it doesn't come out. It doesn't have to be a lot of tape, and it definitely doesn't have to be good. It just has to look somewhat like that. And then you get your timing light. And usually you would hook your timing light up to the positive and negative battery terminals and onto the lead, and with the arrow pointing the direction that the spark travels in conventional theory. But obviously this is a Miata, the battery's in the boot, negative is there because the whole thing is negative, and down on the alternator, this white wire, that's a positive right there. So now you start it up and we'll check the base timing. Alright, when you set your ignition timing, you're going to go up the top here, ignition settings, ignition options wheel decoder, and over the right, go use table, change that to fixed timing, and it comes up there as timing for fixed timing advance, 10 degrees. Go down, hit burn, then you can start it up, and you come over here, and if the timing's off, use the trigger angle offset to move it. So if you increase it, it moves it, it increases the ignition advance. If you decrease it, it decreases the ignition advance. So that way you can set the timing without actually having to move the cam angle sensor. And then when you're done, you come back up here, change it from fixed timing to use table, and go back down and hit burn again. And if you forget to do that, you'll know immediately, like as soon as you drive it, you'll know something's off. And then close, and then carry on. Just give it a little rev so it settles. Down on there you can see there's a 10. And when we push this button, pretty much bang on 12 degrees, which is pretty good, pretty close to where my base timing is set. So I'm happy with that. So I'm gonna put that back in there and then we'll call it a night. Alright, just a bit of a side note at the end of the video. your tachometer is not going to work now, because this thing here is the igniter module that you took off. That wire there is a signal that comes up into this thing here. This is the tachometer. When you take this off, the tachometer is no longer going to work. The igniter module gets the signals from the ECU, this thing here, 2L and 1G. They're the signals that come up here, and you've connected that one and this one to that one and that one. I don't know which way around they are. But there's a third wire that comes from the ECU up to the igniter module. That wire, which is pin G on the igniter module, this one here, 0.2 volt from the stock ECU, but there will be nothing coming out of your mx5, and it's black with a red trace. So if you come over here, up into the engine bay, connect the black with a red trace wire to that one there, which is pin D, yellow with a black trace wire, then you'll have a signal running from your ECU all the way to your tachometer. Now it's still not going to work, so you've got to cut this off, and in your mx5 there'll be an options plug, and one of your option wires will be a tachometer output wire. So you run that wire out, bring it round into this here, and then you go into the tune and set it up to make it work. So you're going to come on here into your tune, go basic and load settings, tacho output, turn it to on, and the other option there is off, and your output pin will depend on which one you have your options wire wired into, so it can send a signal to any of these pins here. And then you put your speed as normal, and you put the speed as half speed if you have a V8, but obviously you have a turbo 1.6 or even naturally aspirated, but it's a 4-cylinder. And then you hit burn, and then you close that, and then your tachometer should work. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you again next time.